Okay, guys, this is urgent. President Trump is threatening to cut off food stamps to 23 states, and I'm talking about cutting benefits for 22 million people, which is 52% of all SNAP recipients in this country. This is happening right now, and if you live in one of these states, your December food stamp benefits are at risk. I know your social media is probably exploding with headlines about this, and honestly, a lot of what you're seeing is confusing or just plain wrong. So I sat down, I read through the actual policy documents, the court filings, and the cabinet meeting transcripts so you don't have to. And I'm going to break down exactly what's happening, who's affected, and most importantly, what you need to know right now. My name is Tony, and I've been covering government benefits, food assistance programs, and policies that affect everyday Americans for years. If this is your first time here, welcome to Retirees Benefits. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because things are changing fast and you need to stay informed. All right, let's get into it. Today, during a cabinet meeting at the White House, the Agriculture Secretary announced that they're going to withhold federal food stamp funding to 23 states, all of them led by Democratic governors. And this is happening in December. Now, here's what led to this. Back in May, the Trump administration requested sensitive personal information about millions of SNAP recipients from all states. They asked for social security numbers, dates of birth, home addresses, really detailed personal data. They said this information is needed to root out fraud and protect the American taxpayer. But here's where it gets messy. 23 states, led by Democratic governors, refused to hand over this data. They went to court and argued that the federal government's request violated privacy laws. And get this, a judge agreed with them, saying the request is probably illegal. But the Trump administration doesn't care. They're essentially saying, if you don't give us what we want, we're cutting off your funding, even though the states have a court backing them up. During today's cabinet meeting, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said, quote, "As of next week, we have begun and will begin to stop moving federal funds to those states until they comply and they tell us and allow us to partner with them to root out fraud and protect the American taxpayer." So we're literally days away from this happening. Let me show you which states we're talking about, because if you live in one of these states, this affects you directly. Everything shared here is based on official statements and filings as of today. Always check your state's SNAP website for the latest verified updates. You know, we just went through a government shutdown in October, where SNAP recipients spent an entire month not knowing if their benefits would come in. One day they'd hear yes, the next day they'd hear no. It was gut-wrenching. And now, just when people thought they could breathe, here we are again with another threat. This is exactly why staying on top of breaking news is so important. If you want real-time updates about anything that could affect your food stamps, your benefits, or your finances, I want to make sure you're informed first. I'm not here to sensationalize or spread panic. I'm here to give you the facts so you can prepare. And look, I know how scary this is. When you're relying on food stamps to feed your family, any threat to those benefits feels like the ground is shifting under your feet. That's why I'm breaking this down for you in plain English. Let's talk about who we're actually talking about here. Because when politicians throw around phrases like rooting out fraud, it's easy to forget we're talking about real people. We're talking about 16 million children who rely on SNAP benefits. Kids who didn't choose their circumstances and just need to eat. We're talking about 8 million seniors, people who worked their whole lives and now live on fixed incomes that don't stretch far enough. We're talking about 1.5 million veterans, people who served this country and are now struggling to make ends meet. We're also talking about people with disabilities, caregivers, people who are working but still don't earn enough to feed their families, and people in rural areas where jobs are scarce. These aren't statistics, these are your neighbors, your family members, maybe even you. Now let me address this fraud claim head on, because I want you to understand the facts. The Trump administration says they need this personal data to root out fraud, waste, and abuse in the SNAP program. And look, I'm all for eliminating fraud in any government program. Nobody wants taxpayer money wasted. But here's what they're not telling you. The USDA has an inspector general whose job it is to audit fraud in food stamp programs. And for the last 20 years, under both Republican and Democratic presidents, Those Inspector General reports have consistently shown that the fraud rate in SNAP is less than 1%. Less than 1%. That's public information you can look up yourself. SNAP is actually one of the most well-run government programs we have. But you don't hear about that in the news. You don't hear about how food stamps lift millions of seniors out of poverty. You don't hear that for every dollar spent on SNAP, the economic benefit to communities is $1.75. You don't hear about the small businesses and local farmers who depend on SNAP customers to survive. All you hear about is the fraud. And yes, fraud exists, but it's a fraction of a percent. Meanwhile, there are other areas of government spending, defense contracting, for example, where fraud, waste, and abuse cost taxpayers exponentially more. But we're not threatening to cut off food to millions of people over that. Here's why the Democratic governors are pushing back. The data the Trump administration is requesting includes Social Security numbers, dates of birth, and home addresses of SNAP recipients. The coalition of states has argued that this data could be used for policies not related to food stamps, including immigration enforcement. Think about that. If you're a SNAP recipient and you have family members who are undocumented, you're now worried that providing data to get food assistance could result in your loved ones being deported. That's the concern. And a judge has already said this request is probably illegal. But the administration is moving forward anyway, so here's the timeline. The Agriculture Secretary said, as of next week, they will stop moving federal funds to these 23 states. That means your December benefits are at risk right now. The federal government funds SNAP, but states administer it. So if the federal government cuts off funding to your state can't distribute benefits, even if they want to. Now, there's some back and forth happening. The states are fighting this in court. There may be emergency injunctions. Things could change. But as of right now, this is a real threat, and you need to be prepared for the possibility that your December benefits might not come through. And guys, this isn't even the only threat to SNAP right now. There are already major changes to the program that were included in what the administration calls the Big Beautiful Bill. Let me quickly run through some of these. 1. Reevaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan. This means you're going to see smaller increases in your SNAP benefits going forward. 2. Modified work requirements. They're expanding work requirements for able-bodied adults, and now that includes people up to age 65. So seniors who were previously exempt may now have to work to keep their benefits. 3. Stricter eligibility requirements. They're tightening up who qualifies in the first place. SNAP recipients are already stressed out about all these changes. And now this threat to withhold December funding is just piling on. Okay, so here's your action plan. Step 1. Check with your state's SNAP office. Call them or check their website to see if they've issued any statements about December benefits. Don't rely on social media rumors. Step 2. If you have December benefits coming, use them as soon as they hit your EBT card. Don't wait. Stock up on non-perishables and essentials. Step 3. Have a backup plan. Contact your local food bank now and find out their hours and what documentation you need. Look into local church pantries, community meal programs, and other food resources in your area. I have other videos on this channel about alternative food assistance. I'll link those in the description. Step 4. If you're in one of these 23 states, consider reaching out to your state representatives. Let them know you're a constituent and you're worried about losing your benefits. Your voice matters. Step 5. Stay informed. Keep checking back on this channel because I'll be updating you as this situation develops. Things are moving fast. Look, I want to be really clear about something. I'm not here to be partisan. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I care about putting people first, especially seniors, children, veterans, and vulnerable populations who depend on these benefits. I've highlighted things the Trump administration has done that I think help seniors. I've shared policies they're proposing that I support. But this particular action, I think it's wrong. And I would say the same thing regardless of which party was in power. Using food assistance as political leverage to punish states, and by extension, the millions of vulnerable people who live in those states, is not okay. These are people who have no voice or very little voice. They're not the ones making political decisions, they're just trying to feed their families. And here's what bothers me most. We're now dividing food assistance into Democratic states and Republican states. That's dangerous precedent. Because what happens when the next Democratic president decides to do the same thing to Republican states? We end up in a cycle of tit for tat that doesn't serve anybody. If you're eligible for benefits, you should get them, period. It shouldn't matter what state you live in or which party controls your governor's mansion. Food assistance should never be weaponized. I know a lot of you are scared right now, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is a serious situation. But I also want you to know that people are fighting for you. The governors of these 23 states are fighting in court. Advocacy groups are mobilizing. This isn't over. And even if the worst happens and December benefits are delayed or reduced, you have options. It's not ideal, not even close, but there are resources out there. Food banks, community programs, churches, mutual aid networks. You're not alone in this. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know your city and state. Let me know if you've heard anything from your state SNAP office. Let's help each other stay informed. And remember, needing help doesn't make you weak. Struggling doesn't make you a failure. You're doing the best you can with what you have, and that's enough. Keep checking back because I'll be monitoring this situation closely and bringing you updates as they happen. We're going to get through this together. If this video helped you, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when I release new updates about this situation. And check out my other videos on SNAP benefits, food assistance programs, and emergency resources. I've got a whole playlist dedicated to food security that I'll link in the description. You've got this. We'll get through this together. I'll see you in the next video.